I met her during one of the loneliest phases of my life, a time when I was desperately looking for someone, to make sense of the emptiness I carried around. She appeared like a dream. Her laughter was effortless. Her eyes were full of stories, and when she spoke, it felt like the world paused just to listen. I had no idea that what I thought was a miracle was actually a carefully scripted performance. She knew exactly what to say, how to act, how to make someone feel like they were the most important person in the world. And I, hungry for love, for attention, for connection, fell headfirst into her illusion. From the beginning, I gave her everything, not just material things. I gave her access to my soul. I opened up about my childhood, my fears, my regrets, my hopes. I led her into corners of my life that I had never shown anyone before. When she cried, I stayed up all night just to hear her breathe steady again. When she was angry, I took the blame just to keep the peace. When she was insecure, I poured affirmation into her until her doubts melted away. It wasn't love to her, it was convenience. But to me, it was the most real thing I'd ever felt. I started sacrificing. At first, it was small, canceling plans with friends, rescheduling meetings, making small adjustments. Then it became bigger, letting go of people she didn't like, changing how I dressed, giving up on personal goals so I could support hers. I convinced myself that this is what love looked like, putting someone else before yourself. But the reality was that I wasn't in love. I was under a spell, and that spell was cast with manipulation disguised as affection. There were red flags. Times when she would go hours without replying but be active online. Times when I'd catch her in a lie and she'd somehow make me feel guilty for doubting her. Times when her best friend acted a little too familiar, a little too possessive, a little too smug. But I ignored them. I convinced myself that love was about trust, and I needed to trust her even when it hurt. I was wrong. Trust isn't blind faith. It's earned consistency. And she never earned it. I just gave it away for free, hoping it would anchor her to me. I became her emotional crutch. Whenever life got messy for her, I was the one she ran to. I comforted her, supported her, lifted her up, only to watch her walk away again the moment things got better. I was never the destination. I was just the pit stop, the therapist, the punching bag. She didn't love me. She loved the way I made her feel about herself. She didn't want to build a life with me. She just wanted someone who would never say no, someone who would always be there no matter how many times she broke them. What made it worse was how she would always dangle hope in front of me. Every time I tried to leave, she would pull me back with just enough sweetness, just enough charm, just enough of a future-shaped illusion to make me stay. She weaponized my love against me. She knew I wouldn't walk away if there was even a shred of hope left, and so she kept feeding me crumbs while feasting elsewhere. I became addicted to the fantasy, to the what if, to the belief that if I just loved harder, she'd finally see my worth. But people like her don't see worth. They see utility. It wasn't just emotional manipulation. It was psychological warfare. Slowly, she made me doubt myself. I started questioning my own instincts, my own memories, my own reality. Gaslighting became normal. Her betrayals were minimized, and my reactions were exaggerated. I was labeled too emotional, too needy, too intense, when in reality, I was simply responding to being neglected, lied to, and taken for granted. But in her version of the story, I was the problem. I was the one who didn't trust enough, didn't love her right, didn't give her space. And I believed it, because when you love someone that deeply, you'd rather blame yourself and accept that they were never who you thought they were. Everyone around me saw the signs. Friends warned me. Family grew distant, frustrated with watching me self-destruct in slow motion. But I was deaf to reason. I defended her to everyone, even when she wouldn't defend me to anyone. I made excuses for her behavior. I told myself she was going through a tough time, that she just needed patience, that if I stood by her long enough, she would come around. But the only thing she came around for was to take more time, more energy, more love, without ever intending to give anything back. It started with something small, something I almost didn't notice. She had left her phone on the table while taking a shower, and a message flashed across the screen. Just a name I didn't recognize, followed by a heart emoji. My chest tightened, but I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a cousin, a friend, someone harmless. But something inside me, the part that had been silenced for too long, told me this wasn't innocent. I ignored it at first. I had built my world around trusting her, and the thought of it being fake was too painful to process. But that moment cracked the surface, and once there's a crack, the truth starts seeping through. The more I paid attention, the more things didn't add up. The way she'd suddenly become protective of her phone, always putting it face down. How she'd disappear for hours with vague excuses. I was with friends, my phone died. I fell asleep. And how every time I asked even the simplest questions, she'd get defensive, flipping the narrative to make it seem like I was being paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid. I was waking up. The mask she wore so effortlessly started slipping, and I began to see glimpses of someone I didn't recognize. Someone cold, someone strategic, someone calculating. The turning point came one evening when I picked her up from what she claimed was a late-night study session. She got in the car, and her perfume was different. Not her usual scent. Stronger, more expensive. There was a red mark near her collarbone, too perfectly round to be random. She noticed me looking and quickly adjusted her scarf, acting like nothing was wrong. But I felt in my gut. I didn't say anything that night. I just watched, observed, took mental notes. Because I realized something important. Confronting her without proof would only make me the villain in her twisted narrative. So I played along. I smiled when she smiled. I listened when she spoke. I even told her I loved her just to keep her guard down. But behind the smile, I was connecting dots. I went back through our conversations, our shared photos, her social media. I noticed patterns. Likes from the same account. Comments that seemed too familiar. And finally, I found it. The message she forgot to delete. A voice note sent to someone else, telling him how boring I was, how she was only staying with me because I was safe, how she wished she would just make a move already. I replayed that voice note until it burned itself into my memory. The illusion shattered completely. She hadn't just been lying. She had built an entire performance. A dual life, one for public display and one in the shadows. With me, she played the loyal girlfriend, the kind soul, the ride or die. But in her other world, I was nothing more than a placeholder. A fool too blinded by love to see the truth. And the worst part? She was proud of it. She joked about it. Made fun of how easy it was to control me. That was the moment everything shifted. Love turned to clarity. And clarity turned to quiet, calculated resolve. I didn't explode. I didn't call her out. I didn't scream. That's what she expected. That's what people like her thrive on: drama, chaos, emotional outbursts they can twist into justification. I gave her none of that. I simply started observing more carefully. I watched her lie to my face while knowing the truth. I listened to her stories while mentally tracing the holes. She had no idea that I knew everything, that I had screenshots, audio, witnesses, evidence. But I stayed quiet because I wanted her to keep playing her role. I needed her to reveal her true self, not just to me, but to the world. That's when I started documenting everything. Every message, every interaction, every contradiction. I was building something. Not revenge, not yet, but understanding. I needed to understand how someone could look you in the eye, say they love you, and betray you without blinking. I studied her behavior like a case file. I noticed how easily she could switch personas, how quickly she moved from victim to aggressor, from sweet to venomous. She wasn't confused. She wasn't broken. She was in full control, using empathy as a tool, emotions as a weapon, love as leverage. It was hard pretending everything was fine. Hard sitting across from her at dinner, while knowing the person in front of me was a stranger. Hard hearing her say, "I love you," when I knew those words had no weight. But I endured it because the truth had come out the right way. Not just to hurt her, but to expose her, to make her see herself without the filters. To hold up a mirror she couldn't shatter. I knew that revealing her lies wouldn't just change how I saw her. It would change how she saw herself. Ask ChatGPT. I didn't lose control. I didn't scream, beg, or ask her why she did it. That's what most people expect when they break someone. Rage, chaos, heartbreak on full display. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. I chose something else. I chose silence. I chose strategy. I chose to make her feel every ounce of betrayal she inflicted. Not with violence, not with words, but with a quiet storm she never saw coming. This wasn't about getting even with loud revenge. This was about precision, about exposing her truth in a way she couldn't deny or escape. She thought she had all the power. She thought I was too soft, too in love, too naive to ever push back. She built that image of me in her mind, a man who would always forgive, always stay, always chase. And for a long time, that's exactly who I was. But she didn't realize that love, once poisoned, turns into something entirely different. It becomes focus. It becomes discipline. It becomes a force that isn't driven by emotion anymore. It's driven by purpose. My purpose became clear. Show her who she really was. Not through screaming matches or public humiliation, but by using her own lies as a rope she would hang herself with. The first step was distance. Not physical, but emotional. I stopped reacting. I stopped asking where she was going, who she was with, why she hadn't called. I let her move freely, because people like her need to feel untouchable to get careless. And she did, without my neediness. She felt freer to slip into her other life. And that's when her mask started cracking even more. I watched it all play out, every little mistake, every lie she told that didn't match up with the last one. She didn't notice the shift in me, because she was too busy enjoying her own illusion of control. I started preparing. Quietly, I gathered screenshots of messages she thought were deleted, voice notes she sent to people she thought I didn't know existed. I had conversations with mutual friends, carefully steering topics in ways that revealed what she'd been hiding. I'd backed everything up, saved copies to multiple places. I didn't confront her with any of it. I just smiled like nothing had changed, played my role like she had always played hers. Meanwhile, I was building a story she couldn't rewrite, a truth so undeniable that even she would be forced to look at it. Then came the setup. I waited for the right moment. A gathering, a mutual friend's birthday party. Everyone who mattered to her was there. Friends, acquaintances, even her other guy, the one she swore was just a friend. She introduced me to him with a grin, pretending everything was perfect. She didn't know that I already knew everything, that I had seen the messages they exchanged late at night, the photos he had sent, the plans they made. She thought she was untouchable in that moment, glowing in her fake image of loyalty and charm. But that was exactly what I needed. I didn't blow up. I didn't expose her then and there. Instead, I pulled a few people aside, quietly, casually, shared pieces of the truth. I didn't accuse. I showed. Let the evidence speak for itself. Her words, her photos, her actions, screenshots, voice clips, timestamp lies. I let the people she cared about draw their own conclusions. And they did. The whispers started. The stares shifted. She noticed a change, but didn't understand it at first. Her empire of lies was starting to collapse, not with an explosion, but with a slow crumble she couldn't stop. And the most brutal part? She couldn't blame me for any of it. I didn't insult her. I didn't threaten her. I didn't twist anything. I simply revealed the truth. Her truth. The one she worked so hard to hide behind makeup, charm, and crocodile tears. She tried to do damage control, but the web she spun was too tangled. She couldn't keep track of the lies anymore. Every time she tried to defend herself, someone had already seen the contradiction. I didn't just expose her to people around her. I forced her to face the version of herself she tried to pretend didn't exist. She didn't see it coming because I didn't fight back like she expected. I didn't act like the broken man she thought she left behind. I became something else entirely. Something she couldn't predict, couldn't manipulate, couldn't control. My silence became my sharpest weapon, and the truth, her own truth, became the blade she never expected would cut through her perfect image. After everything, After the lies, the betrayal, the humiliation, I realized that the most powerful move I could make wasn't revenge. It was resurrection. Not of her, not of the past, but myself. She had dragged me through the mud, shattered the version of me that once believed love was enough to fix someone, to change someone, to save someone. I had bled emotionally for someone who saw me as disposable. But from that bleeding, something unexpected happened. I woke up, not all at once, not in some dramatic moment, but slowly, painfully, and permanently. I began the process of reclaiming my identity, piece by broken piece. She had taken so much from me. My self-respect, my energy, my confidence. I had allowed her to define my worth through the way she treated me. Every time she dismissed me, I shrank. Every time she lied to me, I doubted myself. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was hollow. But rock bottom has a strange advantage. It gives you a clear view of who you truly are without the illusions. I began to see that the problem wasn't just her manipulation. It was my willingness to keep handing her the weapon. And that awareness was the beginning of power. I started doing things I hadn't done in months. Simple things, but powerful ones. I reconnected with friends I had pushed away to please her. I began working out again, not to look better for anyone else, but to feel stronger for myself. I stopped checking my phone every few minutes, hoping for her message. I turned that energy inward, fueling a version of me that had been buried under insecurity and codependency. I started building routines, goals, a vision, and most importantly, I stopped asking myself what I could have done differently to make her stay. Because people who truly love you don't make you beg for their loyalty. I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't see the same man anymore. My eyes were different, sharper, colder maybe, but also more alive. I had finally stopped pretending that I could go back to who I was before her. That version of me was gone, and in its place was someone who had walked through fire and decided never to apologize for the scars. I didn't want pity. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted growth. I wanted transformation. And that's exactly what I committed to day by day, decision by decision. People began to notice. The same friends who watched me fall apart now watched me rise, slowly but surely. They saw the change not just in how I looked, but in how I spoke, how I carried myself, how I stopped shrinking in conversations and started owning my presence. Even she noticed. Of course she did. They always notice when their grip slips. She reached out again, casually at first. A message here, a memory there, testing the waters to see if the old version of me still lived in the wreckage. But he didn't. I had buried him in silence the day I chose myself over her. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to say. I had already said it all through my silence, through my growth, through the life I was now building without her. She no longer had access to me, not because I blocked her, but because the man she manipulated didn't exist anymore. That man had evolved into someone who now recognized red flags as deal breakers, not puzzles to solve. Someone who didn't chase love, but attracted it by standing in his worth unapologetically. The most satisfying part wasn't that I exposed her. It wasn't that others saw her lies. It was that she had to live with the knowledge that I became everything she said I couldn't be. Without her, she thought I'd be lost without her attention. She thought I needed her validation to thrive. She thought breaking me would keep me tethered to her. But instead, it became the very reason I learned how to fly. And nothing haunts someone like watching you become everything they try to destroy. She may have played with my love, but she ended up showing me exactly who I should have been all along. Not someone begging for a place in someone's life, but someone who builds a life so whole, so powerful, so magnetic, that no one who ever took it for granted gets a second chance to touch it again.